Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for Just Like Home, an expert-led presentation about Alzheimer's care and what home means for someone living with Alzheimer's and dementia. Today's webinar is brought to you on behalf of Northbridge Communities. My name is Jen Hastings, and I am the Vice President of Marketing here at Northbridge. We are a New England-based senior living provider. We specialize in independent living, assisted living, memory care services, and we have communities in Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Connecticut. And you can find us online at northbridgecommunities.com, and we'll also put that down in the chat for you to access after this presentation. Today, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Kelly McCarthy. Kelly has been in the senior health industry for over 20 years. She is the Vice President of Engagement and Memory Care Services for Northbridge Communities, and I can attest a valued leader and colleague. Kelly is a board-certified dementia educator for the National Institute for Dementia Education and a certified educator for the Alzheimer's Association's Train the Trainer Memory Care class. Kelly is the author of Brass Ring Memoirs, encouraging stories using practical methodologies to help caregivers reach their goals in Alzheimer's and dementia care. In 2018, Kelly's 8-hour Brass Ring Dementia Professional Educational Program was approved as a nationally recognized dementia certification through the National Institute for Dementia Education. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Kelly to begin. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Jen. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure being here with everyone today. I look forward to speaking on a chapter in my book that almost wasn't written. When I wrote the Brass Ring Memoirs, I remember through the process of it going, boy, I need to write something about residents or individuals saying, I want to go home. And so lo and behold, after I sent it off, I said, literally stop the presses. I have another chapter and inserted that into chapter 9 and find it to be one of the most powerful chapters identifying how to support the feeling of wanting to go home. So the objective today, we're going to be talking about the meaning of home, how to support the feeling. Daily structure and purpose contributes to the feeling of home. Those safety measures to take in any home, and how to share this information with families, understanding where they are in the process. We're going to talk a little bit about home-like versus home, transitioning to a new home, and meeting new people. So regardless whether you are a family member who has services in the home, if you are a person who is in a community, residential living, there's going to be some great information for you to really help the process of identifying home. And so I thought I'd begin with a definition, because thinking about Alzheimer's and related dementias and all that entails, not just about forgetfulness, right? I wanted to look and process the definition of home. So home is a place where you feel in control and properly oriented in space and time. It is predictable and secure. In short, home is the primary connection between you and the rest of the world by Psychology Today. And Robert Frost had said that home is a place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in. So if we really look at this, and I broke it into 3 areas here that I highlighted, and I think that when you're talking about home, whether it's a place that they've lived in for 30 years or 60 years, that they're having now with the cognitive challenges that they have, this inability to recognize or process where they are, these are some of those points I think that really we need to look at. So feeling in control. Oftentimes disease can challenge that, right? And identifying where they are and properly orienting to space and time, and then predictable and secure places. So thinking about home, identifying those, and we're going to be talking more about this as we move along. Those three concepts I think are so important to look at during that process. So each chapter of my book, I have a quote at the beginning of the chapter. And so this is chapter 9, and I actually used a quote from my son. And this is I had to clean it up a bit. I think he was about 16 at the time, where he said, "Hey, Ma, when you croak, I want this tablecloth." And only as a mother could, I laughed but loved it, because I kind of knew what he meant. And I asked him, I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because we've had it forever. And we've had some great memories, and I want to remember that." And so he doesn't have it yet, but he will. And so if you think about it, we're going to talk about now, home isn't necessarily just a place. It's the feeling, right? It's that feeling of predictability. It's the feeling of space and time and knowing it. It's that feeling. And so we don't have to think big about creating a home. We can think small. So what are some of the items you have in your home you would want to take with you on a move? So that's just a question you guys can, I love interaction, and I know that with webinars, it's not always easy, but you have a chat bar there. Please feel free to throw those chats in. I'm going to look forward to looking at them. And at the end, we can answer any questions that you may have. But what are some of those items that you have in your home that you'd want to take with you? Do you see them every day? Right? Do you use them every day? And how do they make you feel? Some things you may not use every day, but you look at them and you just feel home. It's a part of that comfort. Let me tell you a little story about this thing. So my mom and dad lived in their house for 58 years. And when they moved over to an in-law apartment at my house, with big movers, you can only imagine 58 years, moved them into their space now. And my mother took a recycled bag, garbage bag or a store bag, and put her little organizer that had her remote control and fingernail clippers and all that stuff in. And she had it, and she grabbed it, and she had her walker. And one of the movers very kindly said, "Ma'am, would you like me to take that?" And she looked at him and said, "No, this is the most valuable thing that is coming with me. And I have to make sure that it gets where it needs to be." And so again, think about those things in our space that really create home for us, because that's going to create that's going to give us that ability to identify or start to begin to think about what is home to the person that we're caring for, and who do we need to ask, and who do we need to have support us in this process. So another question, and y'all have that chat bar again. So what did Frasier's dad need to feel at home when he moved in? So I might be kind of sharing my age here, but I used to watch Frasier quite a bit. And I remember the dad and the dog and all these great things, but in Frasier's beautiful house, right? And so with his beautiful condo, he had to put this. Besides his dad was his favorite chair. So oftentimes when we're moving people, whether they're moving into an assisted living or other settings, whether they are in their home, it's important to identify that maybe they have things that, might look like they need replacing, but if it's in good repair, if it doesn't have odor, or if you're able to clean that item, it's going to go a long way. Oftentimes family members they could get really guilty and feel like, what, I need to buy mom. I'm going to keep her stuff here, or the husband or the wife, I'm going to keep the old stuff here, and I'm going to give my wife all new stuff when she comes into your community. I'd rather have it the other way around. So have the person living at home get all the new stuff, and have that person who's living in that space that's new really take shape on what it looks like in their home versus getting new products. So what is in your truck, and what connects you to home? So in one of my chapters, I talk about the 18-wheeler concept. And if you think about it, I like to share a favorite quote of mine, which is, oftentimes that which comes from the past is far more real than the current. Oftentimes we look at our lives and think about those things that we've used all our lives. So I'm going to ask another question. How many days does it take for you and I to make or break a habit? How many days does it take for you and I to make or break a habit? Then that next question is, how many times does it take for somebody with memory loss to make or break a habit? And so oftentimes people feel like they're two different things. Like, okay, maybe you get it. It's 21 days for you and I. So that's the answer, about 21 days for you and I to make or break a habit. For somebody with memory loss, it's not that far off, depending on their cognitive level. And it's really important to know that the habits that they've made all their lives, right, especially in the long-term memory. So if you think about this 18-wheeler, the things that are packed in the very front of that truck are memories, are maybe routines or habits that they've had for a lifetime. So I'm going to share something with you. Don't judge me, just know this about me. As I brush my teeth in the shower. So not only brushing it at the vanity, but when I take a shower, I brush my teeth in the shower. And so we understand community living. Not everything has to be socially acceptable. We're still gonna do the things that this person like to do, as long as they're not causing harm to others and the like. So brushing my teeth in the shower has been something I've done since I was in my early 20s. So it's a habit that I've created. And so, you know, that person who may be in community living, having a hard time taking a shower, think about those routines that that person had. You know, do they have a special soap that they use? Do they have a special shampoo or a loofah that they use? A type of a loofah that really makes them feel like they're in that space. You know, Jen was kind of say 20 years, and it is, it's 20 years plus. And one of the things that I recognize is that oftentimes I flew in an airplane and every Monday and flew back usually on Wednesday or Thursday. And when I was in a hotel, I didn't use the soap that I use at home. But boy, when I got home and I was able to smell that Dove soap, 2/3 moisturizing cream, right, with the Dove on it, and it was the pink bar, right? All that made me realize, right through unconsciousness, that I was home. So really paying attention to those items and start asking questions that really relate to, what are the products? What are the things that create home? And not only looking at the things that are happening that they use now, but how about years ago? How about a favorite song that they used to sing that will help them connect or feel familiar as they progress with this disease? So here's a couple of things, you know, I talk to the teams about, and we often have a discussion about hearing this. And, you know, the reason why I wrote this chapter in the book was, as I was traveling throughout the country, I would hear this. I would hear our residents say, I want to go home. I would hear families say that even when they were home, they said, I want to go home, right? And so what I like to do is I like to talk to the team about, have you ever heard someone say this? And how does it make you feel? And oftentimes it's a tough thing to hear, right? For someone to feel that uneasy, to not feel like they're in a space that makes them feel comfortable. And so we talk about what home means to you. So again, I take an opportunity to think about your home. Whether you're now at work and maybe at 5 or 5:30 or whatever it is, you're going to be home. How will it make you feel, right? And so a lot of things that come up are, you know, that feeling love, feeling safe, relief. And so these are some of the things that we often talk about, that home isn't necessarily a place. Oftentimes it's a feeling, right? So this is where I talk to the teams about, and I share with you, you know, these are the things not to do, right? So if you were the person and I said you couldn't go home, you couldn't leave, how would that make you feel? And what are some of the reactions that you would have? And I think that's so important for people to understand, because it's definitely an understanding of This person's no different than us. The feeling needs to be there. And how can we get that? And when we say that they can't leave, it becomes very difficult. So, and if they can't leave, what can we do to support them? So again, going back to that 18-wheeler, but also talking about things that the person has in their lives, because I think the more that we know about a person, the good, the bad, and the not so good, the more successful they're going to be, right? So here's another quote, and this is a chapter in my book about the iceberg. So look beneath the surface, let not the several quality of a thing, nor its worth escape thee. So you might have seen it before, but oftentimes this scenario talks about 10% of who we are is on the top. 90% is on the bottom. So it's so important for family members, people that are in home care, whatever that is to really gather the information, not only what we see, right, but those things that we're finding out about a person through history, through their family. But not only that, these things are going to change. So that means that as the progression of the disease, other things may come up. So make sure whatever system you have to identify home or to identify routine in a person, that we have the ability to ask questions continually through the process of this journey. Because as we know with this disease, it changes, and it can change to the point that we may not know something that's under a person's iceberg that we need to start looking for. So transition to a move or introducing a new caregiver. Here's my Dove soap. See, I told you how important it is to me. It's one of those things where it's on sale, I'll buy a 6-pack. When it's not on sale, I'll still buy one because it makes me feel home. So when you're introducing a new caregiver, or you're introducing a new community or home care, know and speak their name or their nickname, right? We often talk, and I know people have heard maybe caregivers using words like honey, sweetie, baby. So important not to do that. I often talk about the progression of the disease and understand this. One of the first things that I was given was my name, right? And so right now I've got many years under my belt hearing people say, Kelly, hi, Kel. And so when I'm 85 years old, and if I have memory loss, I may not be able to recall that. So saying to somebody, what's your name or what's my name would be a very hard thing sometimes for someone to be able to say. They may skirt around it and not be able to produce the name. But if you look at somebody who's in that state of that age with this disease and say, hi, Kelly, it's so good to see you. That begins to identify a familiar. This is familiar to me. That name is familiar. That's me. You must be my friend. And it's a read. And so it's so important to make sure that people know the name, the person's name or the nickname, and make sure that service planned on whatever process you use so that everybody uses that. And make sure that the frontline associate or the caregiver, whoever that is, the family member who may be supporting your loved one at home, that they understand the why behind the name, right? That is so important. So what is their brass ring? So in the book, it's called Brass Ring Memoirs. And so reaching for goals, right? Their goals and their achievements, maybe the road not taken, all of the things. And brass rings can be hard to get through. So there might have been some of the challenges in their lives, might have been some of the wonderful goals and things in their lives. So again, knowing that, what is that? What is under their iceberg? Those habits, the routines, the road not taken, and the triggers, the things that may worry people, right? The things that may trigger emotions. And what will make them feel proud, beautiful, and confident. And in my book, I call those peacock moments. And so what's specific to that person that conveys that you care, that you know that person? These are all things that are so important to help with that home-like process. So when you're transitioning into a new home, I often share with families and with anyone that is supporting that process to make sure that it is extremely important to share what's under your loved one's what's in your loved one's social history. The more you share about what your loved one's day or routine is like, the more successful they're going to be, right? The more information shares will create an emotional connection that'll help us assist or will assist your resources in providing familiar and successful redirections. So knowing that person and really sharing that information is so important. So, in the class that I teach, that's a certified brass ring training, I give our associates homework. And so on the right-hand side, there's this picture of an iceberg. And it's this one that I drew that I asked them to write their name in and really kind of help them identify the importance of what's around their lives. What can we see, right? Whether it be that I have glasses, that I have a wedding ring on, the color of my hair, all of those things that you see, and then the stuff underneath. So for community caregivers, I talk about the fact that, working in healthcare, whether it be senior living, home care, I'm sure you've heard people say, I want to go home, from the people that we care for. And so when we understand that home is not only a place, but it's a feeling, you begin to be able to understand or ask yourself the questions, what does home mean for that person, right? So this is really stuff that should be done prior to or at the beginning of, so that we can help with transition. Histories and physicals from physicians are important, and they are absolutely need to be done during that process of having somebody starting a service, whether it's home care or residential living. This is just as important, right? So not only the medical and the medical side of things, but the personal side of things, the routines, knowing those products that they used before, not maybe now, but years ago, and really making sure that we're using those products that create that home-like environment for a person. Using family as a resource will help us know what the person you're caring for had in their home, and will make them feel connected to their new surroundings and feel like home. Structure and predictability. And this is such, I feel, a game changer when we really get to understand the importance of this. So structure and routine in a day creates predictability. It happens for all of us. We all have that structure and routine in our day, and it creates predictability. Everyone in the home, right? Whether it be, again, your home in personal life or home in residential living, everyone creates that structure regardless of their role. So deviations can cause challenges, right? So challenges in sleep, behavior, nutrition, or increased cognitive decline. And so it's important to understand how important or how these structure and predictability can support these processes. And we're going to go into that in a little bit. So safety challenges in the home. I think that it's important to understand that as someone progresses with memory loss, if they have a disease that is a progressive memory loss, which most are, right? You're going to see challenges come up in a home, regardless of where they are. And so it's important to look at these things and know that this may come up. And what are we going to do to support this when it does? So again, when somebody's living alone, this can be a challenge. Social isolation is absolutely a challenge. Lack of purpose can be a challenge. Challenges with medication and monitoring other medical conditions. Long distance caregiving, right, is a challenge for their maybe a daughter or someone who's living farther away. Victimization, the decline in judgment and misuse of products. And so I think that when somebody is at a home, we need to make sure that we understand that these are areas that we have to look at, right? So let's talk about that misuse of products. So take a look at these. And this was actually a part of a campaign that was the Massachusetts long-term care that identified some of the products that could be misused, right? So here you go, you've got Mountain Dew or any kind of drink on the left with bright colors, and then you've got Fabuloso, which is a chemical, a cleaning agent that can be devastating, right, if somebody uses inappropriate. So looking at those products in a home to make sure that we're safeguarding is so, so important. And look at the bottom left here, you've got Gatorade looking a lot like other health cleaning products. And so those are things that are important too. And then on the bottom right here is X-Lax on the top left, and then the famous Hershey bar, which none of the two shall ever meet, right? But can. And so really making sure that families understand that with a progressive disease diagnosis comes this responsibility or support to be able to really look at these things to make sure that we don't have a mistake that someone uses a product inappropriately that can cause jeopardy. Here's some more. Anybody know a blue diamond? I know those are mothballs, but I know I eat almonds that are blue diamond. And so again, using that name might confuse someone if they're familiar with the blue diamond product that's edible. And then those pods, right, for cleaning, whether it be for dishwashers or washing machines, can still resemble things that can be misused inappropriately. So making sure that we're safeguarding in our home is so important. And then the bottom, looking at candies and vitamins and pills that all resemble the same thing. And so again, knowing that as someone cognitively declines, there is a potential, an increased potential of misusing products. So making sure that we safeguard those are extremely valuable. And so the other thing that's really important is wandering. And, you know, the administration or the Alzheimer's Association talks about the fact that 65% of individuals with the diagnosis of Alzheimer's or related dementias wander. That's a high percentage. And so the two that we really have to look at, and there are both, which is wandering with an agenda and wandering without. And you know, what's fascinating is through my years of experience, I actually did a study with another, a long time ago, community, and we identified that 2/3 of all elopements happen in assisted living and not in our memory care. Now that it stands to reason as memory care is secure oftentimes, right? But if you look at this, it's important to understand that someone who lives in AL, like this gentleman down on the bottom left, he may walk and go for a walk and he takes a left and he takes another left and another left and he's going around a block. He takes another left and here he is back at the building. And so this may be somebody with a very mild cognitive impairment. This could be somebody even living at home that does a daily walk to a local store or back again around a block. And the thing that we have to be mindful of is the uneven pavement, the fact that peripherally they might have some distortion with their vision. If there's road construction, right, our summer road construction that's happening as we speak, those things can block roads that have been routine for this person. And so instead of a left, a left, a left, and a left, they may end up going a left, and then be rerouted to a right and take that thinking that they know where to go and they get turned around. So knowing that is important. I know that there are systems in place there's GPSs on phones, there's trackers like Tile app. There's things that you can do. There's the Safe Return bracelet from the Alzheimer's Association. And those are some resources we'll get into later, but that's something that's important. The other thing is this gentleman on the top right, which is wandering without an agenda. And this may be somebody that's just going through, checking on doorknobs, opening them up, checking on doorknobs, may not know what to do when they get there, but can end up going into a place that may be dangerous. Maybe it's a janitor's closet. Maybe if it's at home, it's a basement where there's some rickety stairs and poor lighting. So it's really important to make sure that we're safeguarding against that, allowing them though to wander, right? Because if we don't allow wandering, then there could be increased challenges elsewhere. So setting up systems for routine exercise, and being able to wander freely and safely is so important. Here's some other areas that are things that we need to make sure that we understand as the progression of the disease. Could be challenges in hygiene. So again, hair cutting, so hair care, cutting, dyeing, leave-in condition. These are things that maybe we've done all our lives and can be a challenge as a person progresses. And so making sure that they're not left out to the device of that person to do. I think that's important. Hair removal and waxing, showering, dental care, dressing, nail care, incontinent care, lotion, makeup, and shaving. Now, I understand that with high functioning residents, these things can be fine and they can do them fine independently. And that's okay. But understand that as the disease progresses, even if they have a very mild case of dementia, what can happen is if they have a urinary tract infection or they have the UTI or fever, anything like that can cause them to have a spike in a decline in cognitive ability. So it's important to identify, okay, where are they in this process? And then making sure that we're doing these routine checks to give them the safety that they need. And so in allowing them that independence. You know, one of the things that we talk about to our teams is that, you know, because somebody has done it, maybe at the day of admissions, that we really need to make sure that we're supporting that process. We don't want to do things for, right? We don't want to give up that purpose, but we want to do things with, or give them that ability by standby assist, or kind of going and making the bed while they're doing their dental care, that we're kind of keeping an eye to make sure that they're safe and that they're doing it safely and accordingly. Supporting families that have loved ones at home. And so this is so important that some families we know have experienced caregiving for loved ones with memory loss. And others are experiencing this challenge for the very first time. And so we need to be mindful as when we're speaking with families about the process, we want to make sure it's an educational process and not a frightening thing. As we had mentioned before, everyone's different. Things may occur, these challenges may occur, or they may not. So here's some best practices again on education and not frightening individuals. So setting up a safe system and allowing the loved one to be independent as possible while maintaining a safe environment. So again, looking at those things that I'd shown in the previous slides, and maybe kind of getting rid of things that they may use or misuse, right? And kind of looking ahead to those possible challenges. Again, some challenges may occur. Not every experience or experiences are going to be the same. Share support resources like local services in the town and helplines through the Alzheimer's Association. So Alzheimer's Association's helpline is so important. This line is not only important for family members, but remember that if whatever agency you oversee, whether it's assisted living or home care, the Alzheimer's Association's there for you too. That helpline can be called by anybody, right? And so use that as a resource. The other thing you want to do is look at your local towns. You may have resources that you can share with the families for maybe fire and safety, that they may have their own process of identifying, hey, let us know if your loved one has memory loss so that we can keep an eye out. And they may have a system where they would be able to contact you if they found your loved one in the local, walking down a local street and not knowing where they are. So these are all kind of important things. And again, reaching out to your fire and your local police department may even open up other opportunities and understanding what's in the town to make their stay safe in their environment. So home versus home-like. Now, oftentimes I hear the home-like word. And so home is what home-like strives to be, right? So it's definitely home. Home is what home-like strives to be. The more a caregiver understands the importance of that structured routine creates predictability. And the predictability, it creates a feeling of being familiar. All caregivers know and understand, right? And try to achieve what makes that feeling of home, right? For the person that they're caring for. Oftentimes you'll hear somebody say, well, where do you want to go? What's home, right? I know a daughter had mentioned that to me. My dad's saying he wants to go home and he's been living here for 40 years. And so I asked him, what's home? And you know, that part, and she ends up saying he gets very frustrated, and likely so, because oftentimes it may be that feeling. So we have to kind of dive deep into that iceberg and really identify what was it that made them feel home. It may be something that is not in their lives right now that maybe we can introduce, right? Understanding the possible safety challenges is so important as the progression of the decline. And so understanding that ahead of time and just kind of safeguarding as time goes on. The more the person they are caring for will be successful and feel that they are truly home. As I had mentioned before, it takes 21 days for you and I to make or break a habit. The routine, the knowledge of it takes about 35 days to make or break a habit with somebody with memory loss. Sometimes can be challenging to understand, but let me give you an example. So many of our residents who come into our community, and we bring them, right, or escort them to breakfast, lunch, and dinner 3 times a day. And we'll usually have them sit in a particular seat with somebody, maybe a friend or maybe a roommate. And what we find is after that month, after a month and a half or so, you'll see people at mealtime when we say it's time to eat, they will walk right into the dining room and sit at the exact same spot. And so that's that novel learning that takes a little longer for somebody with memory loss, but it does, right? And knowing that, I think, is a game changer for anyone when we're trying to either make a break or create a new habit, right? And identifying some of the things that were so important to them related to home. So I want to thank you very much for joining us today. And I'd love to open it up if we could and see if anyone has any questions.
So Kelly, we did have one question in the chat here I'd like to read back. So what is your advice when the family member who has the authority over the dementia patient has no idea of their past routines, products used, interests, etc.? How do they get that information to the facility?
Yeah, and that can be really challenging. And I think that one of the things we need to do is really be open-minded to maybe a friend that has, is visiting them, and maybe really kind of looking at other resources that you may have to be able to identify maybe a routine. I know that friends may only have a limited amount, but you know what? Talk to the resident as well. The person's coming in, they may not get it right, but if they can share with you what makes them feel home, some of the things, and just by having a conversation, right, about me joking about the fact that I have Dove soap, they might say, well, I used to like that bar with the green, that's the one there with the green smell. And it might be, who knows, it might've been Irish Spring. And maybe we do something where we bring it in and have them smell it and say, oh, that's the one I used to like. So really kind of being creative and identifying how do we find out what home is. And you know what, it doesn't have to be actual. So I think a lot of times people think, I had a guy, I had a gentleman who loved to be called Captain Bob. And we nicknamed him Captain Bob. And he used to talk about fishing and how much he loved fishing. And when we finally got to speak to a family member, they said he never fished a day in his life. But guess what? We called him Captain Bob, and he loved it. And that's all that mattered.
Absolutely. Love that advice on the nostalgia of smell and senses too.
Yeah. Important. Anyone else?
Okay. No. We did have some input on the chair, the Frasier chair.
Oh yeah, good. I knew you'd know
So,
it. Good. I wasn't the only one.
That's right. So Kelly, do you have any experiences to share or advice for answers to what feels like home? What are more abstract? Example, conversations with their parent or childhood friend, experiences at school or place that is long in the past. Is it fair game to pretend, recreate, impersonate those experiences?
Absolutely. I think that joining a person's journey is so valuable. I think that it's individualized. So I feel like the person who's going to do it needs to kind of really look at weigh the risks and support the process, really kind of maybe doing it in a space that the person can confide and talk to them about their childhood. And I think that absolutely, we can do that. We can ride their wave, join their journey. I don't necessarily, I mean, for example, I think that if somebody says, this could be anything. I mean, if somebody says, where's my mother, right? Oftentimes I'll hear somebody say, well, say she's home cooking, right? Just, oh, she's home cooking. Well, let me tell you, if you said that to me, I would be so afraid because my mother burns cold soup. And so really making sure you know the person, right? So if you looked at me and I said, where's my mother? And you said she's at the shoe store dyeing shoes, I may get that, right? Because that's what she did. That was her profession. She's at the movie theater. She ran movies. She was one of the first female projectionists in the state of Massachusetts. So knowing those little tidbits about a person will help you in that journey. But if you go and you just think, okay, Kelly's in this and her mother must have did this, right? She probably didn't work. She probably, stayed home and cleaned the house. And that wasn't my mother at all. My mother was constantly working. And so knowing that about a person, I think you can help identify home, but it's about knowing what's under the iceberg.
Absolutely. And really to dovetail off that question, we have a question from a guest, Jan, and she wants to know if you could talk about, how to deal with a person with dementia when they think someone is alive who has actually passed.
Yeah. So, one part of my training, I actually use something that the Massachusetts Alzheimer's Association uses, that Joanne Cohen-Cost and Paul Rea created, which is really thinking about the limbic system and the amygdala, understanding that emotionally, even though cognitively, reasoning, logic, and fact begins to decline, emotional doesn't decline like that. And so what we find oftentimes is that when we say to people, no, your loved one died. So let's say if they say, hey, where's my husband? Where's my husband? And you say, your husband died, right? What are the feelings that person's going to have? So again, I know it's individualized, but oftentimes if their emotions are still intact, but their logic, fact, and reasoning is off, they could be hysterical. Oh my God, nobody told me my husband died. They could cry, they could be angry. Who the heck are you? I had breakfast with my husband. And so I want to say this, just like taxes, death is something that is, we all experience. And I am not opposed, right? But I think it's a family choice. I am not opposed to having a loved one be a part of a ceremony that shares the death of somebody and that maybe celebrates their life, whether it's a smaller scale, whether it's a church service, whatever that is. I'm not opposed to that. That's a family discussion on if that person can digest that. And oftentimes they can, but it stops there. So the prayer cards, the cards that the sympathy cards can really trigger if they're in the person's underwear drawer, and every once in a while they pull them out and they see that. it can definitely spark. So I think it's a process, and I think it's something that y'all have to work on. But I had a gentleman once who he knew his brother had died. His kids were coming to pick him up. We had our dining person help with the tie, and he was all dressed up, and he said, I'm going to see my brother for the last time. And he went to the service. I think he came back around 7, 8 o'clock. I was there, and I looked at him and I said, how are you? And he said, and I said, how are you? And he says, I'm doing great. And he looked at me and he says, I don't know where I've been, but I'm all dressed up. I bet I had a good time. And so that's it, right? And yes, they may bring it up, and this is where, again, if they say, where's my mother? Identifying what you could say, right? Knowing about her, what could you say? And if you do say she's dead, how does that person feel? And if they're always crying, if they're always getting upset or even depressed, I forgot again. Oh, I'm so forgetful, right? Things like that. It's a hard process for people. So I think it's on an individual basis. You really have to know the person. But I do think that look at the emotion of a person. And if they're saddened, if they're having a catastrophic reaction where they're, getting all upset, I don't think it's worth to repeat.
Thank you, Kelly. That was very insightful. And we actually have a question here about your book. So the actual name of it, I think, is right up here on the screen.
Yes,
correct.
Brass Ring Memoirs, encouraging stories using practical methodologies to help caregivers reach for their goals in Alzheimer's and dementia care. So it is on Amazon, but I know our communities, and I think that you're sharing a few books too, right?
We are. So for those of you, and actually pretty much everybody that joined us this afternoon is still here with us. Anyone that registered here and joined us, you'll be receiving a copy. So we'll be following up with that. Wonderful. And we're really excited to share. This, as Kelly mentioned, was a talk on one of her chapters, but there's a lot more tidbits and nuggets in the balance of her book. So we feel really excited to share that with all of you, and have had just a wonderful journey this afternoon, sharing insight from Kelly on this one chapter.
And thank you very much, Jen. I look forward to sharing another chapter. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for joining us. And if you or someone you know is interested in learning more about Northbridge communities, I encourage you to visit our website. And please do also reach out to Kelly or myself if you have any questions. When we follow up with the recording of today's webinar, we will share contact information as well, and we're happy to speak one-on-one or over email, whatever works for you. Thank you for joining us.